There was something in me that wanted something beautiful. And I think I trace it back. Let me go back to the time I was 15, when my father had stopped going to church and I was going to church by myself. I lived in this little branch in Wickenburg, as I mentioned, and someone's recommended that I get a patriarchal blessing, which is a special blessing that people are given if they want them, given by a patriarch. And so I a friend took me from Wickenburg to Mesa, which was a long way away, and because there was a patriarch there. And the patriarch, whose name was Alma Davis, laid his hands on my head and gave me what was really, in retrospect, a truly remarkable patriarchal blessing. He knew nothing about my family, but he said things that were prescient and things that were certainly relevant. He said, among other things, he said, "You have been hurt by the ugly and the evil things of life, and now you should turn away from them." And I'd already done that. I'd already made a determination that my life was not going to be a repeat of the life that I grew up in, that it was not going to have violence and alcohol and all of the discord that my life had been characterized my life. But he said other remarkable things, and one of the things that he said that didn't really mean anything to me at the time. He said, "You have been blessed with special gifts, and you should seek for the beautiful in literature, the beautiful in music, and the higher and finer things of life, and these will lead you into paths of truth and righteousness." He said, he mentioned those gifts several times. He also said that I had been blessed with an understanding heart, and that I should give understanding to people in need. Seeking for the higher and finer things of life was something that he directed me to. As I say, it didn't mean anything to me, but I come back to that when I say that something drove me to go over to the listening library. I didn't have to do it for a class, but I said to him, to Jacob Boss, I said, "Brother Boss, I have no idea what I should listen to. Will you help me?" And he started me out, listening to Tchaikovsky and Beethoven, and I can remember hearing that music and feeling that it was sublime and that I wanted it in my life. So literature and music, whatever I understood of art, which wasn't much, dance, the finer and higher things were part of me. I think they were part of me from an early child, even though there was no art or music or literature in my family. There was we had no classical literature. We had the Bible, and we had comic books, and that was it. But something happened to me when I remember later when I was at UCLA, I started a program called Arts Reach, which took arts and dance and music and poetry into the prisons and juvenile facilities in California. And what inspired me to do that, I saw a film that was made by somebody in New York who started a program where they gave tickets, or they got the unused tickets from concerts and plays, and they gave them to people in institutions and got those people. And I remember one man who'd been in a mental institution, and he got a ticket to go to hear Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and he dressed up and he went, and he was being interviewed, and he said, "And I went to hear Beethoven, and I came alive." That's what happened to me. I came alive, and those things defined my life. So I finished as I mentioned, I came home at Christmas to work to make enough money to pay for the spring semester or quarter. We were on the quarter system then. I worked in the summers. My father, as I mentioned, was somebody who really tried to teach his kids to be responsible. So even though I paid my entire way through college. When I went home and lived at his house in the summers and got a job, I had to pay board and room. My father teaching me to be responsible. And he would sometimes, when I would work, he would say, what'd you do with your money? I suppose you pooped off all your money this summer. And I later taught a poem by Robert Frost, I Wish I'd Known, that I could have said to my father, never ask of money spent where the spender thinks it went. Nobody was ever meant to remember or invent what he did with every cent. Of course, I wouldn't have said that to my dad because I was afraid if I did, I would have paid a consequence for that. I mentioned my father's discipline. When he was the branch president in this little town in Arizona, he would collect the tithing money on Sunday and bring it home Sunday and then to deposit it in the bank on Monday. But my sisters, one or the other of them, stole the money on occasion. So Dad got us all in the bathroom and he took his razor strap out and he took Bill and he said, Bill, did you steal that money? And Bill said no, and Dad would whack him with the razor strap. And then he'd do me, and then Gloria, and then Evelyn, and then Clayton, and if nobody confessed, he'd start over till somebody confessed, and then he would have that person apologize to the rest of it, but it wasn't really a compensation. But spankings and the Navy belt was as bad as the razor strap, I can tell you. Anyway, in that experience of working my way through college, I learned the responsibility of taking care of myself. From the time I was 17, I was on my own, and that didn't hurt me. So anyway, after my sophomore year, I decided to go on a mission, and so I put in my papers and was called to the Northern States Mission, which at that time included Illinois, Iowa, Wisconsin, Upper Michigan, and half of Nebraska. It was a big mission. There are probably 5 missions there now, but it was a big mission. And I spent a couple of days in the mission home in Salt Lake, 2 days, and then got on a train with one of my best friends, and we rode the train to Denver. We had a big layover over in Denver, and my mother was living in Denver at the time, and I remember going to see her. This is when she was living with an ex-convict, and then went on to Chicago and went to the mission home at 6011 North Sheridan Road, and that began my mission in the northern states. I loved being a missionary, actually. I was frightened of being a missionary. I was frightened of knocking on people's doors. It scared the heck out of me. I didn't want to do it, for sure. My first mission president was a great man by the name of Abraham O. Smoot. He had been the postmaster of Salt Lake, and he was 77, I think, and he and his wife had been called to lead the Northern States Mission, and he was a great character. I remember him taking us to see the White Sox and the Cubs play baseball. He'd buy peanuts for everybody and take us there. He was a grand man, but not too long after I was on my mission, he died in the mission field, and we got a new mission president whose name was Richard C. Stratford. My the first assignment was in Kankakee, Illinois, a little town southwest of Chicago, and there were 4 missionaries there, and it was really an interesting experience. A mission is where I grew up, and as I became a responsible adult, as much as one could call me that by the time I finished. But part of it was just the challenge of doing something very difficult, of trying to teach the gospel to people some of whom didn't want to be taught, and you, of course, didn't teach them, but to knock on doors every day and hope somebody let you in, and to talk to them about the message you had, which in those days was called the Message of the Restoration. Kankakee, I was fortunate because we were able to baptize 3 young couples, all of whom were friends, and they became not only the core of that little congregation, but they became lifelong friends and still are friends of mine. It was a good beginning to a mission.